we have come a long way in getting our listing ready to go. We have set up our loop. We have added the property details that we have so far, and we have added all of the files that our client is going to need. Now it is time to prepare these files for signature. We're going to start by opening the files that we need one by one. We're going to start with the forms because those will be pre-configured for us. I'm starting with the wire fraud. Wire fraud is incredibly important. Have this conversation with your client every time. I'm going to open it up. I've got my seller. There is no second seller, so I select no one. I click autofill, and I'm just going to check, and this is all there is. It's ready to go. Save and back. I'm going to go, we've already gone through the list guidance for listing docs. That's what helped me set these up. Licensee disclosure of personal interest. I'm going to open it up. Here comes my autofill. We don't know who the buyer is yet. We have the seller. Seller 2 is no one. We have our property address. We have our seller name. We have our geographic description that we added to our details. We'll click autofill, and we'll see that it's waiting for our seller's initials here. And there's a little bit more for me to fill in. I'm going to put my name here. And then I'm going to describe the reason for this disclosure. Related to seller. That's it. I'm going to save. I'm going to go right back out. And I'm going to continue on. Next is the seller disclosure. We have chosen to use the minimal one. I'm going to open that up. It is a form. We don't have a buyer yet. Seller. Seller 2 is no one. We have our street address. We'll click autofill. And this seller's property disclosure, it just describes the law that the seller's making no warranties. Brokerages are being held harmless, and there is a place to list material defects. This is perfect for someone who does not have the information nor the desire to fill out a standard seller's property disclosure. We'll click save, and we'll go right back out. Next, we have our lead-based paint disclosure. But before I show you that one, let's start with the law notice. This describes the federal law. Lead-based paint is a federal law. We've got our autofill pop-up. Our seller 2 is no one. Our landlord is no one. Our landlord 2 is no one. We'll click autofill. We're going to come down, and I'm just going to spend a moment sharing with you the law. The licensee's obligation is to disclose, and the seller's obligation, before you sign a contract, to disclose the presence of any paint that you know about and provide any additional information or the existence of any available records. You've got to provide the tenant with the pamphlet. You have got to share any records. You have got to disclose any additional information. You have to provide 10 days for them to do a lead-based paint hazard risk assessment. The sales contract is going to require that you show that you have done these items. And here we can say that we provided the pamphlet or the this information, and when we here we've got our defaults, and that is it on that one. Next, we'll go to the lead-based paint disclosure. We don't know who our buyers are yet. Seller 2 is no one. Buying agent, we don't know that person yet. We know the listing agent, that's me. We have our address here. We have our names and our legal description. So we're going to go through our sellers. It's all set up for our seller. We have our defaults set in. Those can easily be changed. I am going to initial that I've provided the seller of their obligations under U.S. code. That is why I gave them the law notice. I'm signing here, and I just want to point out this describes a little about lead-based paint poisoning. It is terrible. It is irreversible. Look it up. There's a reason for this, the need for this disclosure is because it has done some serious damage. And as a result, it has ended in some serious lawsuits. Any person who knowingly violates the provisions of this, they're subject to civil and criminal penalties, triple damages in a private civil lawsuit. So it's going to take about a minute to make sure that we're in compliance. And so we're going to spend that time and do this correctly. That is the reason we ask you to do the law notice. It is for your protection. It is for your client's protection. The last thing that we are doing is the listing agreement. We're going to open that up, fill in our roles, and here we can add our commission rate. We're going to go for the 6%. We have our client information. We have some listing information that we can put in here, our start date, and our expiration date. Let's make this as far out as possible. We're going to put our price on here. We already have our legal description, and we're going to click autofill. Now, this is not a contract training. However, I'm going to note a few common, issues that I see with the listing agreements. You do need to fill out whether the property is occupied by a tenant and the financing terms. You need to discuss whether or not the seller is going to put the property on the internet. They probably should. And I always say you can't sell it if you don't show it, so you're going to want to use a lockbox if you can. Withholding verbal offers or offers after a property is accepted, that is for you to discuss with your client, as is the compensation. But in Section 8, what I want you to notice is that the total compensation is going here. If you want to charge your seller a transaction fee, it goes here. If you want to charge a set rate, say it's a $10,000 piece of land and you're charging them $1,000 to sell it, that goes here. And then we're going to go down to the cooperation with other brokers. Of that total amount, what are you offering others? So of the 6%, I'm going to offer a straight 3%. If I was offering 3% minus a transaction fee, that's what that would look like. And you're going to do the same thing for a single agent, a transaction broker, and a non-brokerage relationship. Maybe that one's just going to be 1%. Maybe I have a transaction coordinator. Dalton Wade has some good ones. And I'm going to charge the buying agent, I'm going to pull that out of my compensation, $474, the whole thing. So I'm charging the $79 plus the $395. And those are the biggest, that's really the biggest mistake, is the compensation. Often I see 3%, 3%. The total goes in 8. What you're offering a co-broke goes in 9. We definitely want to sign the dispute resolution. And you can sign this as you go. That's the cool thing about this. Any additional terms here? For example, if you're going to reduce the commission, if you're the listing and the selling agent, you would write that there. You can sign here. If all of this is in ink, I definitely want to see line 181 filled out, especially if it's in ink. We're going to save that. Now, if you have any documents that you want to set up manually for signature, you can do that too. Let's say our survey, we want someone to initial that. This is actually an appraisal. Say we want, so we're going to do add initials, and then you can just drag initials and assign them to who you want to sign this. So that is how we set up a file manually for signature. There are videos that are going to show that in more detail, because with a listing, almost everything is really going to be a form. But it is add, and then you can add initials, signature, text, date, name, checkbox, just with a click and a drag and an assign. You can assign something here. You can remove a field with this X. Highlight, remove. So there's your very quick training on manually setting up the signatures. Thank you for joining me.